DLSS, or Deep Learning Supersampling. Hate it or love it, the dynamic variable rate technologies like NVIDIA's DLSS is here to stay, with the machine learning AI downscaling your native resolution to boost the FPS in the games that support it. The reduction in image quality is marketed as being indistinguishable between DLSS on or off, with the frame rate boost being quite noticeable. But is it worth it? Let's talk about it. But if this is your first time to the channel, you want to learn more about building PCs and other gaming related stuff, be sure to click the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss a thing. What's happening, YouTube and the internet? Terrence here, and we are back inside the lab and taking a look at NVIDIA's Deep Learning Supersampling AI technology, which uses tensor cores in NVIDIA's RTX 20 and 30 series GPUs to test its worthiness here in 2021. Should you be interested in boosting your frame rate in games that support DLSS and you have a compatible NVIDIA GPU? Now, to date, there are 19 games that support DLSS, either 1.0 or 2.0, with some more set to follow. But the global semiconductor shortage, popularity and increase in profitability in crypto mining, and the scalper market all have made the acquisition of a GPU in any series of any class either extremely difficult to find or not selling at a stupid, crazy, expensive price. So why this video? While the graphics card situation is dire, with both markets continuously being hit by the 2021 tech-demic, we will recover, and these features will improve or get better as newer series graphics cards or even 20 or 30 series graphics cards become in stock or become more affordable. But continuing on our 4-part series, which you can find the links to the first 2 installments later down in this video in the cards, or you can also find it down in the description box below. And I tell you what, while you're down there, you're going to want to give this video a like and subscribe to catch the finale where we dive into the world of ray tracing. But again, for this video, we are testing DLSS on the ASUS ROG STRIX RTX 3090, which does have 328 3rd-generation tensor cores under the hood, packing 19% more of those cores than an RTX 3080. A card which has better value for its money, but doesn't matter because you can't find one currently anyhow. But DLSS is available at all resolutions, but the benchmarks that we're testing in this video will be at 3840 by 2160p with all the games turned up to their max settings, with the exception of Crysis Remastered. And now we're testing each DLSS setting from the lowest possible preset all the way to the highest in each game that offers different quality levels. But in the side-by-side comparison benchmarks, right, you're going to see capture gameplay footage on one side with DLSS turned off, and then on the other side you're going to see the performance preset that scaled the highest and offered the biggest performance uplift. And it's important to note that yes, while the gameplay is captured, recorded, and edited in 4K, this video is very much processed, uploaded, and encoded, or somewhere in that order, in glorious 1080p. So the FPS difference is what you're going to want to pay attention here, more so than the change in image quality. But if you're able to tell a difference, or if you're able to notice a difference with DLSS turned on or off, tell us down in the comment section below. But enough with the hyper AI techno jargon. Let's load the side-by-side, see how good or bad DLSS here is at 4K in 2021, and of course, talk about the results. FPS boost? Yes. Options to balance your settings? Absolutely. Blurry, washed out textures and noticeable image quality? Well, not so much. As you saw in the benchmarking segment or the side-by-side comparisons, not all of the games scaled evenly right across the board. But taking a look at some of the games that benefited from DLSS in some form, starting with the game that got the biggest uplift, and that was Fortnite at max settings and the performance preset, which we saw an average boost up to 26% and about 20% uplift in minimum, with the 1% lows remaining the same. And this was tested at Pleasant Park. And to be perfectly honest, this preset showed no signs of washed out textures or blurred pixels. The difference between DLSS on or off at any of these presets wasn't noticeable at all. So if you want a performance boost at a high settings and a high refresh rate, you could definitely take advantage of DLSS here in Fortnite. But if you want a game with a little bit more detail and eye candy, Watch Dogs Legion showed no significant difference in image quality between DLSS turned on and DLSS turned off. And the FPS boost was actually quite welcoming, especially with the image quality remaining virtually the same, with details remaining detailed and distinguished with objects of the scene, at least during the synthetic benchmark run, which brought in an average of a boost of up to 37% in the average FPS and a 30% uplift in the minimum and 1% lows, and this was at the ultra performance preset. And I really couldn't tell any significant difference between DLSS turned on or off at any of the presets. So kudos to Ubisoft for implementing DLSS well in Watch Dogs Legion. And then of course the oldie but goodie, Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the highest preset and with DLSS enabled, brought in an 18% FPS boost with their averages, but oddly enough only had 3% boost in the minimum, but a 34% uplift in the 1% lows. The FPS boost here in Shadow of the Tomb Raider wasn't as needed as the game runs well in native 4K, but the 34% boost in the 1% lows made the game run smoother with less noticeable FPS dips and impact on the image quality because it was nearly impossible to tell the difference. Which another game that scaled extremely well, which was Control, which as you can see here rendered the game at 1440p with DLSS enabled. And here's where DLSS really shine and why NVIDIA uses it as its key selling point, because with the machine learning AI enabled, it brought in a significant FPS boost up to 50% on averages and the 45% boost in the minimum and 1% lows. Some parts of the game did appear blurry, right, and a bit fuzzy at times, but it wasn't anything super irregular or obvious. It was mostly noticeable while you're moving around the building or the environment, but the nearly 50% FPS boost across the board almost certainly makes sacrificing some of that image quality for performance worth it. And overall, DLSS was implemented really well in those games, but as you saw in some of the other games we tested, DLSS didn't scale as well with the image quality being noticeably different or the FPS boost being negligible at best. Starting with Cyberpunk, right? Cyberpunk 2077 being one of those examples, as you saw during the side-by-side comparison benchmarks, where the FPS impact was minimal between the different DLSS settings, but the change in picture quality was without a doubt very noticeable. Some of the textures, especially on the road and vehicles, look blurry as you approach them, and just about every DLSS setting worth the minimum FPS boost brought an unwelcoming fog across the screen, embellishing the pixels into a cloudy Vaseline haze of neon lights and retro constructs. And then there was Crysis Remastered, which virtually saw no FPS impact between each of the DLSS settings I tested, and at times some parts were noticeably hazy and washed out when you were dashing around the map, but I did notice that one of the cores on our 1920X was pegged at 94% in the area I did the benchmark run in, and this was at the very high settings, and also it was very much the same with DLSS turned off. Crysis Remastered could very well be CPU dependent, even at 4K, and especially once it's rendered at 1440p. This is something we will revisit as each of the DLSS presets fail to yield any significant FPS boost that would warrant enabling DLSS versus running the game at its native resolution. But as you saw with Control, once DLSS was turned on, the resolution rescaled or downscaled the game to 2560 by 1440p. And that's in a nutshell how DLSS works, or deep learning super sampling works. In our case, instead of rendering the game or our games at our native resolution of 4K, The machine learning algorithms went to work routing all 328 of those RTX 3090 tensor cores. The results were an image that looked nearly identical to that native 4K resolution, but ran as if it was rendered at 1440p, a difference of about 5 million plus pixels. It could boost your in-game frame rate, right? And leave plenty of resources for ray tracing and other high-end graphical settings. It's not perfect, causing environments to appear washed out and blurry with loss of detail in textures and models, as was evident in Cyberpunk 2077 and Crysis Remastered. But DLSS is constantly learning and being updated to work out most of those issues. And so, like most things that are good but destined to be great, should get better over time. And to learn more about building PCs and other awesome related content, watch the top video first and the bottom one next. Do remember to give this video a like on your way out if you haven't yet, and join our community by tapping the round subscribe icon down below. And with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and go. Thanks for giving this one a watch. I do hope to catch you on the next one. So until then, be easy.